This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
The COVID vaccine back in the headlines in Canada as an Alberta-based law firm launching a class action targeting the provincial government, the Alberta government, and the feds, representing people who are claiming adverse side effects, in fact, vaccine injuries. Now, the numbers are impressive. When you look at the number of vaccines distributed, the number of vaccines in Canada as of January of 2024, that's the last time that Health Canada put those numbers out. More than 105 million vaccines delivered. Of those, nearly 12,000 serious vaccine injuries. In just a second, we're going to talk to two lawyers who are representing those, claiming those injuries, find out what they're endeavoring to do, and ultimately what this is all about. We want to learn more about this story of a class action that more and more people are starting to talk about. Could the Alberta government, could the feds actually be vulnerable on this one? This will be an ongoing conversation. We're kicking it off today. Plus, you know, we talk all the time about how it's never too late to learn. As a matter of fact, that's kind of the whole premise of this show. We hope to learn something every single day. On the back half of this episode, the second half, the back nine, so to speak, we're going to meet three people who are living that commitment to learning no matter what phase of life we're in. A conversation presented by Athabasca University that I guarantee will inspire you as many of us start thinking about that back to school routine. Hard to believe that the kids are going back just a day or two after we're talking about this right now. Where did the summer go? This episode of Real Talk is presented by Business Career College, and they have a specific call out right now for financial advisors, for senior finance professionals who are looking to learn more about digital assets and decentralized finance. You know, 75% of the new generation of investors tell pollsters that they're looking to add digital assets to their financial portfolios. And so that means that financial advisors are going to start seeing more questions about things like blockchain and Bitcoin and NFTs and decentralized finance. If you want to be able to advise your clients effectively, you need to be going beyond these self-teach videos, social media reels. You need to learn from professionals. Business Career College has been a leader in financial training since 1997, and their new designation program, the Certified Digital Asset Advisor, could mean career longevity for you and better service for your clients. You can learn more about the CDAA designation by visiting businesscareercollege.com, and while you're there, don't forget the exclusive promo code Ryan20. We'll knock 20% off that course for you. That's Ryan20, all one word, at businesscareercollege.com. So here are the numbers. This, per the Government of Canada, you can easily find this online. Up until the government stopped updating these numbers on the 19th of January of this year, on January 19th of 2024, there was regular posting on reported side effects following COVID-19 vaccinations in Canada. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can see the numbers here right now. Up to and including January 5th of this year, 105,016,456 doses administered. That was up until the beginning of December of last year. Total adverse events following those immunizations, following the shots, just under 59,000. But here's the number that we're going to be talking about today. It's 11,702 adverse events following immunization reports that were serious. Now, it's just 0.01% of all doses administered. But if it's you or a loved one that we're talking about, then it's a big deal, right? We're checking in right now with two lawyers who have commenced a class action lawsuit for COVID vaccine-related harms. They're targeting the provincial government here in Alberta and the federal government. Jeff Rath and Eva Chipiuk making their Real Talk debuts. Thanks to both of you for making time for us. Eva, this all started with you talking to one client in particular, right? Carrie, a client of yours comes to you reporting a vaccine-related injury, and that's kind of what gets the ball rolling on this. Can you bring us up to speed?
Yeah, so thanks for having us, Ryan. And so the case started with Carrie Sakamoto, a young mother from Lethbridge, Alberta, mother of three, 45 years old, going about her day-to-day activity during the COVID period. There she is on the screen, and is listening to the messaging from the government and the public health authorities saying, we need to protect grandma. We need to, everyone needs to get vaccinated so that we could get back to normal. And she had taken her mother into her house because she was on her own, didn't want her on her own. So listening to the messaging, she took first the AstraZeneca because that was available to her. And then when it was the time to get her second vaccine, she got a call to go in, and she went, and that one was no longer available. And she had the Pfizer vaccine. Immediately after the Pfizer vaccine, she had tremendous side effects. She was admitted into the hospital, was there for 10 days, unable to walk, unable to talk, unable to swallow. So really close to death, and then made a wonderful comeback and has been dealing with these injuries since. And the point and the reason for these lawsuits is that a number of people have been harmed by these vaccines, and there's no redress. There's not even discussion about it. They're being censored, and that's what we'd like to talk about, why we've launched this lawsuit and the basis for it.
There's some interesting background to why we're all talking here. We had Professor Timothy Caulfield on the show a short time ago, and we're talking about some vaccine-related issues. And we had significant feedback to the show from people, from regular audience members, who told us that they felt as though their perspective was being discounted, that they felt that they had experienced, or in their experience, they did experience vaccine-related harms, and they felt like they were being scoffed at, laughed off. These are some of the things that people were telling us. And we want to have real conversations here. We want to seek to understand where people are coming from. Jeff, how do you get from a specific situation like Eva's describing to us, and then a class action? Let's just start off
with, you're talking about Timothy Caulfield having been on your show. Timothy Caulfield is the chief misinformationist for the government of Canada in Alberta on these issues. So I was grateful that you put up on the screen that the government of Canada acknowledges that there's been over 11,000 serious adverse events related to the vaccines. The number is actually exponentially higher because of the way that the government of Canada has made it virtually impossible to report vaccine injuries. In our office alone, we have 3 documented cases of myocarditis following the vaccine out of the 10 people in our office that got vaccinated. So we had a 30% myocarditis rate in our office. I was contacted recently by a young girl that plays collegiate hockey. Herself and the other young women on her collegiate hockey team were forced to get vaccinated against their will so that they could attend university and that they could play collegiate hockey. And on her team, there are now 3 young women who've been diagnosed with vaccine-related myocarditis that is so severe that they are no longer able to play collegiate sports. That's just the tip of the iceberg. And what's really offensive about Timothy Caulfield is he actually stated in advance of the injection of Truth Town Hall in Calgary that everybody was denigrating, that quote unquote, there's absolutely no evidence that these vaccines cause harm. The government of Canada's own information says that there's been over 11,000, that they acknowledge 11,000 serious injuries. Timothy Caulfield runs around pretending that no one has ever been harmed by these vaccines. It's a dangerous lie, and he needs to be called out for it. So that's the start of it. The second part, and that's where our lawsuit goes, is that there has been this campaign of misinformation and propaganda led by Theresa Tam, Justin Trudeau, and all of the chief medical officers of health in Canada to basically bury and hide the harms of these vaccines so that people cannot give informed consent to getting the shots. So as an example, some of the data that's been hidden by the governments and has not been talked about by the governments, let's just start with RSV and childhood shots. Pfizer itself, in its own data, admits that the known side effect of these vaccines is that it makes people 4 times, so that's 400% more likely to contract RSV after these shots. And of course, there's a simple reason for that. It's because these shots impair the immune system overall. So what they're not telling people, and what doctors are telling parents when their kids are getting vaccinated, is, oh, by the way, it's a known side effect of these shots that if your child gets this, this so-called vaccine, or this, this mRNA injection, your child will be 400% more likely to contract an illness that's 600% more likely to kill him or her than COVID. The other thing that the governments have been burying is Pfizer's own EUA data on, and this is again specific reference to the childhood shots, where Pfizer's own data indicated, and this is like even before the shots were being rolled out from their original test program, that children that got the mRNA vaccines were like far more likely to end up in ICU with myocarditis than they were to contract COVID or die from COVID. So Pfizer's numbers were, notionally 1 child per million would die from COVID, because we all know COVID really didn't kill children in a statistical sense. 1 child per million would die from COVID. So that's 0.0001%, if we like doing the 0.1% things, would die from COVID. But 36 children per million would end up in ICU with myocarditis, and that was admitted by Pfizer. So we all know now, of course, Pfizer, was grossly overstating the death numbers from COVID for children and grossly understating the myocarditis numbers. And anybody who knows anything about pediatric ICU, if you put kids into the hospital and put them on ventilators in the ICU with myocarditis, as many as 20 or 30% of them will die. It's just a statistical fact. So, Pfizer's own data proved that the childhood vaccine was 10 times or, 10 or 15 times more likely to kill children than COVID. But that information wasn't made public, wasn't told to parents in advance of them having their children vaccinated. And there's just been this massive cover up throughout, where all we get from public health officials is the parroting of slogans like safe and effective. So, that's what the lawsuit is all about, is that people did not have the ability to make a full and informed choice, because this committee of chief public health officers, and I think they had a little term for it. It was like the vaccine hesitancy committee, where they're figuring out how to quote unquote fight vaccine hesitancy. And what they were really doing was determining how it was that they were going to bury information that was relevant to people's informed choices with regard to either vaccinate themselves or their children from the public under all of these slogans about safe and effective. Okay. So that's really, to me, what the lawsuit's about.
Okay. I'll note, obviously, you're putting a lot of numbers in front of us. You're citing a lot of statistics. That's the type of thing that you'd be putting in front of the court. And obviously, those will be tried in court. This is not a courtroom. We're talking.
No, but all of those numbers are verifiable. All those documents are available.
Jeff, I'm just saying.
They're Pfizer's own documents, Ryan. So don't just tell me that these are unproven numbers.
I'm not
telling you. The things I'm telling you that are true, and if anybody thinks that they're not, they can fact check me in real time. They can go to covidlitigation.com, our website. They can look at the documents.
Sure. And I'm not saying anything controversial. I'm just saying you're putting a lot of statistics in front of us, and the court will be taking a look at those statistics. I'm just most interested to know in how, for example, a 0.01% rate, and like I said, we're having this conversation because people in good faith that listen to this show feel like they're not being properly respected, feel like they're not being listened to, and I don't see any reason why this isn't something that we should talk about, because there's nearly 12,000 documented cases of serious vaccine injuries, right? The question is whether or not this would be a successful class action, and whether or not you'd be able to prove some of the language in the claim. I mean, you're talking here right now about the government, the chief medical officer of health, the prime minister burying and hiding facts, deceptive practices. That's something you're going to have to prove to the court. Is there precedent? Is there any precedent when it comes to a class action like this targeting different levels of government?
Well, there's all kinds of precedent with regard to deceptive marketing practices.
Sure,
but in this case, the evidence is self-evident. Like we've all lived it. Every week we were all told a new lie by the government or government officials. It's like, get the shot, it's going to stop the spread of COVID. Well, when they were saying that, they knew that COVID wasn't stopping the spread. In July of 2021, even Public Health Canada was admitting that vaccinated people were still going to be spreading COVID. In July of 2021, the UC Davis Institute of Virology issued a massive paper basically saying that anybody that got vaccinated was just as likely to spread COVID as somebody, or so-called vaccines, because we don't say they're not vaccines, they're injections. But UC Davis put out a massive study showing that anybody who got injected with these shots was just as likely to spread COVID as somebody who wasn't. But notwithstanding the science, notwithstanding the fact that there's evidence that Public Health Canada knew that to be true, they still brought in the vaccine mandates in the fall. AHS threatening to fire doctors and nurses that didn't get vaccinated. Prime Minister Trudeau trampling on the civil rights of Canadians from coast to coast to coast, telling us that we couldn't get on airplanes, couldn't get on trains, couldn't get on ferries, couldn't go to sporting events, all those things if we didn't take a shot that was not capable of stopping the transmission of COVID. So that's a real issue. And I think all of those things are eminently provable. And it's eminently provable that the people in the government had access to this information, didn't care about the information, continued to do whatever it was that they did. And that's the very definition of negligence. So, obviously, from a legal perspective, we think we have a very strong ground to stand on. Evan, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that is that we've never, in at least my history, have seen the government undertake such a coercive and even incentivizing measures. So they coerced their own citizens to take it by saying, we're going to take away your civil liberties, which they did. They also incentivized these shots. So there should be a higher obligation on government officials when they're taking measures to that extent to coerce and incentivize. And Jeff went through the information that is required for informed consent, and whether or not the government met that standard is going to be a question for the court.
Yeah, it's so and I mean, I guess a lot of people will say, when you talk to public health professionals, when you talk to scientists, virologists, researchers, they'll tell you that there's plenty of evidence that the vaccine did a hell of a lot to slow COVID and to stop the spread. Obviously, that this is something, Jeff, you'll fight this in court. You can litigate. This will happen in front of a judge. I'm not the judge. You can make your argument.
Well, we're having a conversation about
we are.
it, Ryan.
Yeah.
So, I know you got your talking points that you want to get out.
Oh, no, Jeff,
Obviously,
Jeff, why do you, you're coming across as very defensive. Like, I invited you to come on the show. I want to hear your perspective. I'm not the enemy. You and I probably don't agree on, Evan, just give me a sec. You and I probably don't agree on a lot, but I'm happy to hear you out. That's my style. I want to hear you out. I want to figure out what this is all about. Like, when we're talking about serious vaccine injuries, what sort of things are we talking about? Like, Ever, are we talking about people that felt pressure to get the vaccine, so they couldn't fly or they couldn't open their restaurant? Or are we talking about people with serious heart conditions now, people that had strokes? Like, who's going to be part of this class action? What is a serious injury?
As an example, and again, let's go back to your 0.01% number. The fact is in Canada that the way that the vaccine injury reporting system works in Canada is it's virtually impossible for doctors to report vaccine injuries. There's documented cases of doctors literally having to spend dozens of hours trying to get the system to accept what appears to be a very straightforward vaccine injury. Most doctors don't even bother because of the amount of time and hassle it takes to file a vaccine injury report. Then on top of it, there's the whole issue of all of the propaganda in and around the vaccines and vaccine delivery, where doctors were being attacked and vilified by the college and having their licenses threatened for even suggesting that the vaccines could cause harm. That's still ongoing. So the long and the short of it is that 11,000 person serious vaccine injury number is literally just the tip of the iceberg. So, and as an example, one of the people in our office that contracted myocarditis immediately following the vaccine, even though he contracted the vasculitis and myocarditis within days of getting the shot, having his heart rate pegged at over 105 for weeks on end, having MRIs that demonstrate both vascular damage and heart damage from something arising from the shot, his cardiologist refuses to acknowledge that this is vaccine related. So he's now having to go to other specialists and whatever to get somebody to confirm a diagnosis of vaccine injury, because the medical profession as a whole from my perspective, is complicit in what amounts to a massive cover-up of vaccine injuries in this country. And that 11,000 number is just the tip of the iceberg. And again, keep in mind, you have guys like Tim Caulfield who come on your show and claim that there's no vaccine injuries. So that's the problem.
And I just wanted to add to that, Ryan, and it goes to what you were saying, is the question, and our lawsuit has nothing to do about the people that took the vaccine and had no issues. As I said earlier, the government and public health authorities urged us, in the interest of public health, to get vaccinated in order to save grandma. Fine. So that's what society did. But now there's individuals in society that have been harmed. And those are the individuals that we're representing in Alberta, at least. And there shouldn't be disparagement amongst these people. They shouldn't be ignored. And that's why people are calling to your show, because people are being ignored. They're being suppressed. And that is entirely dishonest. It's inhumane, actually, in society to treat people that way after public health authorities have been urging people to get vaccinated. Then you have to take the same ownership of harms caused by those injuries, and we're not seeing that. And that's what the part of the basis of the lawsuit is. But generally, I think you can understand why there's a little bit of frustration on this end, is that these people are silenced, and it shouldn't be, just two lawyers even just trying to defend these people. This is, the government undertook this, and the government has neglected these people. And whether that's correct, I think we can all agree that that's not right. And so we're trying to do something about it.
Listen, one thing that we can all agree on is that people that experience serious side effects to a vaccine should be taken seriously and receive the proper care. And if the court decides, then compensation. I'll be interested to see how this plays out. Are we talking about just physical side effects? Are we talking about just physical injury? Or are we talking about, are there going to be people joining this class action, claiming that, for example, and I know that this did happen to people, but claiming that their business went bankrupt or they suffered financial losses due to mandates? Who's all involved in this?
Well, that's a separate lawsuit, Ryan. We actually have a separate class action dealing specifically with business losses arising from, and specifically in Alberta, because our office was involved in the Ingram case, as you may or may not be aware of. We're the only law firm in the country that succeeded in getting a court order saying that every single chief medical officer of health order issued in the province was illegal, specifically ultra vires, the Public Health Act. So we're taking forward a lawsuit on behalf of businesses in a separate class action saying that all of these businesses that were illegally shuttered by Jason Kenney and Dina Hinshaw are entitled to compensation on the theory that even if it was bona fide, like even if there's a bona fide belief that these vaccines were for the good of society as a whole, we're saying ethically, morally, and legally, on what theory should a small segment of society be harmed economically for the alleged good of society as a whole, without society as a whole compensating those people for the harm that they suffered on behalf of society as a whole. But that's a separate issue, and that's a separate lawsuit. And if people are interested in it, the pleadings are at rathandcompany.com, business litigation or COVID business lawsuit, whatever. We could talk about that another time. That's a subject and a topic in and of itself.
You got separate parallel class actions right now that'll go before the courts. Eva, how does somebody like your client, Carrie Sakamoto, how does she, where's the burden of proof here? How does somebody prove that a health condition or an incident relating to their personal health, an injury, let's call it, is related to the vaccine? Do you have an uphill climb there to prove that to the courts?
No, because in Carrie Sakamoto's case, the federal government has already acknowledged that this is a vaccine injury from the COVID vaccine. So we don't have a burden of proof at all there. And like we've been discussing, the claim has to do with the misinformation and whether or not informed consent was vitiated because of the public health authorities' representations that this is safe and effective, coercing individuals to taking it, incentivizing them to take it. So in that instance, no, we don't have a high burden. It's already been proven by the federal government.
Okay.
And in Carrie's case, her husband and her, didn't just blindly, we need the shot, give me the shot. they demanded of public health officials to provide them a written list of the side effects from the shot. And the written list that was provided to them by AHS was redness and soreness at the injection site, potentially, runny nose and fever the day following the shot, and, a few other very, very minor allegations of potential side effects. Carrie suffered neurological damage, paralysis, a form of Bell's palsy that affects the entire left-hand side of her body, short-term memory loss, on and on and on. Of course, none of those things were listed as side effects. And of course, none of the side effects that we're talking about that were in the Pfizer monographs and in the Pfizer EUA documents, including myocarditis, vasculitis, death from anaphylaxis, all of those very, very serious side effects, right, were never listed by AHS as possible side effects. Parents were never told that if they gave their children the COVID vaccine, that their children statistically were more likely to be killed by the vaccine than the virus. Parents were not told that Pfizer's own data indicates that if they take the COVID vaccine, they're 400% more likely to contract RSV, which is an illness 600% more likely to kill them. So that, and the government knew all of this. The government that approved, this is the government of Canada, that approved these vaccines, had access to all of the Pfizer data, and it's there in black and white. But instead, all we got was all these public health officials standing up and parroting slogans like safe and effective, or Dina Hinshaw going up in public and lying about children having died from COVID when she knew that they died of 4-stage cancer or congenital birth defects, but she tried to terrorize parents into giving their children childhood vaccines. It was horrible what went on.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know about the 400%, 600%. Again, that'll go before the court. Let me ask you this in closing, because I'm just curious. I'm just Googling this right now on the fly. I look for what are the rates of adverse reactions to like acetaminophen, to something like Tylenol. Now, you could probably effectively argue that we're talking apples and oranges and there's differences here, but referencing drugs.com. So here are some numbers based on research. Common side effects, serious side effects, cardiovascular side effects related to something like acetaminophen, like a Tylenol, tachycardia, chest pain, hypertension, peripheral edema. They say 1 to 10% would be a common rate of a cardiovascular side effect to something like acetaminophen. That number would exceed a serious side effect, statistically speaking, to the COVID vaccine, as an example. Is this something, a statistic like this, that would work against your class action in court?
No, because people take acetaminophen as a matter of choice, and you don't have. And first of all, we don't know what dosage is either. I mean, you can die from an overdose of aspirin. There's no doubt about it. I mean, you can all your organs can bleed out and all the rest of it. You have to take an awful lot of it, right? So, those side effects that they're talking about, is that 1 tablet, 2 tablets, 100 tablets? We don't know from whatever it is that you pulled out. I mean, there's no doubt that any medicine taken at a high dosage can be toxic, right? With regard to these so-called vaccines, though, the real issue is that all of these horrible side effects were well known in advance, including, an exponentially increased miscarriage rate in pregnant women. Yet we have, public health officials telling pregnant women to run out and get the shot. It's safe and effective. They don't tell these women that there's a 25% increased rate of miscarriage coming directly from Pfizer's own data. Heaven forbid that we tell anybody that there's anything harmful that arises from these shots. It was just one lie after another. And we think it's irresponsible, and we think there needs to be a reckoning.
Eva, you and your colleague Jeff have cited several specific names here. I'm curious to know, is this class action targeting just Alberta's provincial government and the federal government, or are you suing Dr. Dina Hinshaw, Jason Kenney, Justin Trudeau, Dr. Teresa Tam? Who's all named in this?
No, we don't need to. We sued the government of Canada writ large, we sued the Alberta government writ large, and all of the people that you're referencing are all basically, minions of the government of Canada and minions of the government of Alberta.
Right, but it's different if you sue a government versus suing somebody personally, right?
Well, we're not suing them personally because let's face it, one claim would bankrupt Dina Hinshaw, notwithstanding.
That's why I'm curious to know. One successful claim might. Yeah.
Well, we wouldn't be doing this if we didn't think we were going to succeed, Ryan.
And just
and we have a pretty good track record.
And going, Ryan, to the stats you pulled up, that is part of the point of this lawsuit, is no drug, particularly no vaccine, is 100% safe and effective. Yet that's all we've been told. And people continue to propagate that misinformation, those lies, basically. Let's call it what it is. And so there is a duty on people to represent clearly, informed, so that people can make informed consent. But no drug, no vaccine is 100% safe and effective. That's not the question, but that's something we should be acknowledging. The point of this lawsuit is to acknowledge the people that have been injured, and what are we doing with those individuals?
Okay, people can.
And the other thing to keep in mind, Ryan, is that the number of serious injuries in our society arising from the vaccines is exponentially higher than the 11,000, the number that you're citing. And the reason that the statistics are lower is because, and we have evidence of it. I mean, we have doctors that we're going to bring forward that'll testify as to how difficult, if not impossible, it is to have vaccine injuries accepted by the bureaucrats that literally sit as the gatekeepers of the vaccine injury reporting system in this country, where clear medically diagnosed vaccine injuries are refused into the reporting system because the bureaucrats have been artificially keeping the numbers low. But even that 11,000 number should be shocking to people. That's serious injuries. Like at one point, they used to break it down and tell us how many people had died. There's a government number floating around somewhere that they admitted to as many as 800 or 900 vaccine-related deaths. So that was a year or two ago, right? My father was a senior public health official, and he was involved in shutting down the swine flu vaccine in this country. They shut it down after 50 deaths. So why do we still have products on the market that at least they've acknowledged 11,000 serious injuries, and they've acknowledged at one point, and I'd have to find the specific reference because I keep scrubbing the internet for this stuff, but they acknowledged at least 800 deaths out of those 11,000 injuries directly related to the vaccines. And these products are still on the market. It's not good enough to say, oh, that's 0.1%. Then why don't you tell people, when you're telling people to get the vaccines, okay, they're safe and effective, except for the times it's going to kill you. It's safe and effective, except for the time you're going to have a serious paralytic disease and neurologic disorder. It's safe and effective, except for the fact that your children are going to be exponentially more likely to contract RSV and die from RSV. It's safe and effective, except the fact that the vaccine is more likely to kill your children than COVID. That's what was missing from all of this messaging. It is pure propaganda, and it was an exercise in keeping the public from knowing how unsafe and ineffective these products really were.
We've been talking to Jeff Rath and Eva Chipiuk from Rath and Company. They've launched a class action against the Alberta government, the federal government as well, representing clients claiming serious vaccine injuries. You can learn more about that class action at rathandcompany.com. Thanks for making time for us today, you two.
Thanks for having us, Ryan. It was really good of you to do this. I appreciate it.
Well, listen, let me just say real quick, okay? Like, and Jeff, you say to me, Jespo, you got your talking points, right? I don't come into this with talking points. You and I probably disagree on a ton, but I also always want to be the person that's going to hear out somebody with different opinions. I want to respect other people's experiences, and I want to make my decisions and form my opinions based on as much knowledge, vetted, credible knowledge as possible, and a big part of that has to be having conversations like this. And so we're not afraid of having conversations like this.
That's great, right? We should sit down and have a beer sometime. I'll bring a stack of documents a foot or two high. I'll bring you all the receipts and you can read them yourself.
Okay. Well, my eyes might glaze over, but I appreciate it.
The information's there is my point.
Okay. All right, you two. Thanks. I appreciate the conversation.
All right, Ryan. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, you bet. Johnny, you and I knew that this was going to be a fiery conversation, and it was. I want to acknowledge, and I'm sort of like, we're looking some information up on the fly.
A lot of numbers
obviously, there's a lot of numbers flying around there. My personal position on this is that public health officials, those that developed the vaccine, I think achieved something remarkable in a short period of time. I do believe that the science and evidence suggests and proves that the vaccine went a very long way
and we're not just talking
slowing
about
the spread
North America.
of COVID. We're not just talking about North America, but I also want to say, like, the spirit of coming into this conversation, obviously Jeff in particular has a lot of passion, for sure. I'm not surprised he's a lawyer. But the last thing that I want to do is to discount, denigrate, or ignore the 11,000 or more Canadians that have experienced serious vaccine side effects.
Definitely
and
not.
I think that there were, listen, if you look at the numbers, the vast majority of people that took the vaccine experienced no adverse side effects and were fine. But that doesn't mean that that was the case for everybody. And if it's you or your child or your mom or whomever it is that did experience or is experiencing something serious.
For sure.
There's a very good friend of this show. I actually don't think that she would want us to talk about this publicly, but let me just say, there is a recurring guest on this show, perceived to be a progressive, and who I know is someone who is vaccinated herself.
We've talked about this, yeah.
Her brother-in-law died shortly after taking the vaccine. Their family is 100%, I'm not speaking on behalf of their family, but they are 100% convinced it was related to the vaccine.
Sure. Yeah.
That's one personal experience. That would be probably the only one, the person in my orbit, somebody that I would know. But that family obviously is going to approach a conversation like this very differently than somebody who got their shots, got their boosters, experienced good health, and has now moved on with the rest of their life, right?
I agree with you, and I know someone personally very close to me, a woman who had adverse side effects, and we're 99% sure it was from the vaccine as well. But when you're talking about, the government in bed with big pharma in North America, that's all fine and good. But these numbers span globally.
Yeah.
We're talking about, countries that hate North America develop their own vaccine, either, in conjunction with other companies, some of them, or whatever. China, India, they all develop their own vaccines as well. And these numbers line up globally as well. So when you're talking about, we were forced to take the vaccine. Well, are you forced to wear a seatbelt? There's adverse effects from wearing a seatbelt. If you're overweight or underweight, you could get a throat injury or a chest injury, but you still got to wear a seatbelt. It's the law, right?
I'd be curious to see. And when you're talking about global pandemic, it's a completely different situation. Like, people aren't. This is sort of you hope
the amount of research we have is
so
huge.
But you hope it's a once in 100-year type thing.
That's
but
usually
obviously,
what it is.
For a lot of people, though, this is for most of us, this was something that we weren't used to, and there were public health measures that we weren't used to. Interesting that they're running parallel class actions, one representing businesses, one representing individuals. I'm not a legal expert, so I'd hesitate to offer my opinion, but as a civilian, my guess would be it'd be a tougher row to hoe for the businesses to claim financial compensation for shutdown or for limitations or what have you than it would be for humans. I do want to note a couple of things that we were able to track down, just this per the National Library of Medicine out of the United States. They did a systematic review meta-analysis of the risk of miscarriage following COVID-19 vaccination. I'm just citing this source. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a researcher, but per this
You're not a scientist?
Matter of fact, I stayed out of science in university on purpose, but per the National Library of Medicine, they say per study, there's no evidence that COVID-19 vaccines are associated with an increased risk of miscarriage. If Jeff has different information or different facts, he'll obviously present those to the courts, and that can be litigated there. Myocarditis is a condition, a symptom that you'll see recurring in people's conversations related to the COVID vaccine. Again, people can find this information at NCBI. It's a .gov site out of the States. We're again referencing the National Institute of Health here. Among the 531 million Pfizer vaccine doses administered in the EU, they did find, or they have recorded, just about 11,500 cases of myocarditis or pericarditis due to the vaccine. That's approximately 0.002% or 22 cases per 1 million. So, I mean, Jeff talks about his, obviously, an anecdote. He talks about his law firm. He says, 3 out of the 10 of our partner, or rather of our lawyers, are experiencing that for 30%. That's not a number that holds across the population. That would be an anecdote. Still, I'm sure something you could probably argue to compel a court. I wouldn't know. That's not my line of work. But those are just a few numbers for you. As always, we encourage you to fact check as much as you can. This is a conversation that we were going to get started, and that we'll keep this conversation going because, we're hearing about vaccine injuries. We're hearing about long COVID, and we heard from you. We addressed you, those audience members that sent emails to us, that sent DMs to us, those of you that asked that your name not be used, but you told us, and some of you with a great degree of passion, that you did feel ignored, that you did feel like you were being dismissed, that you felt like your side of the story wasn't being told, and we appreciate you being in touch with the show. talk@ryanjesperson.com is where you can send us an email anytime relating to anything that you're hearing here on the show. If you have a personal story relating to this, or there's somebody that you think that we should consider interviewing, we'd love to hear it. In just a second, we are changing gears entirely. Folks are heading back to school. For the most part, it's young people. It'll be university students as well, but there's no age on self-betterment. There's no limitation to learning. And we're going to celebrate a few people that are living that in real life. That's coming up in just a quick second. First, we want to let you know that our friends at Friesen Brothers have a couple of really cool things going on right now, including a new app that allows you to order ahead. That's right. It's a new app for online orders. Allows you to conveniently order Friesen Brothers party trays directly from their app. And then you can pick them up in the Edmonton stores. That's Rabbit Hill and Glenora, Fort Saskatchewan, or Stony Plain. You can easily install that app. You'll find it online on Friesen.com. That's FRESON.com. If you're looking to get organized, if you absolutely need to declutter, and if you're looking to add value to your home, probably your biggest investment, you're going to want to take a second to check out CaliforniaClosets.ca. Right on the homepage, it's easy to sign up and schedule a free consultation to check in with their design team. You can talk about the rooms you're looking to improve. You can talk about your budget, your timeline, and then they're going to help you develop a plan, custom designed to fit your space and your budget. They've been doing it for years. Nobody does it better than them. Again, that's CaliforniaClosets.ca. And our friends at Kubi Renewable Energy are hanging the We're Hiring sign in BC and Alberta. Kubi is located out of, proudly, Edmonton, their headquarters, a beautiful spot in Calgary. They're down in Lethbridge. A shout out to our friends in Lethbridge. And Kubi is in Kamloops, too. That's how they're serving the West Coast, Western Canada's busiest solar installer. They're looking for electricians, apprentices, salespeople, office managers, you name it. Kubi is growing fast, and they're looking for you to join that team. If you want to be part of Canada's green energy movement, check out the careers link at kubienergy.ca. I wanted to give a shout out, by the way. We got Randy Thunderhorse joining us in the chat. Mm-hmm. He says you need to give the good Dr. Timothy Caulfield, it's Professor Timothy Caulfield, mm-hmm. But he says you need to give him a chance to rebut. Randy says these morons. I don't want to sling mud. I do know this, that Caulfield and Professor Caulfield's a good friend of mine. I believe him to be very credible, mm-hmm. and I think he does a great job. Obviously, he's not everybody's cup of tea, and that's fine. It's pretty obvious why somebody like Jeff Rath would take issue with Tim Caulfield. You'd perceive him to be the enemy. But I know that Tim has been invited to participate in debates along these lines.
I think him and Jeff will get along.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we'll get the two of them in here to have a beer.
Very passionate about.
What we do is we get them in here to have a beer together, and then we live stream that for our Patreon supporters.
How would that be? We get them a little liquored up first. Yeah, that would go well.
That's right. But if you want to check out our interview with Professor Caulfield, that was just last week. You can find it in our archives on YouTube and on the podcast. But I wanted to give Randy a shout out in particular.
Mm-hmm.
He's tuning in. He's watching the show right now from Greece.
What?
So how cool is that? He's how many hours ahead of us? And Randy, I wanted to let you know, I did see you in the live chat last week. I didn't get a chance to address it before the show ended, but I know that Randy was on the Greek island of Corfu. Have you ever heard about Corfu,
yes,
Greece?
I was just at a wedding and we were talking about their honeymoon and they're going to Greece, and I was like, this is the one place I haven't been that I want to go.
Oh, man.
It's just
So
that crystal blue water. I mean, those they're kind of cliche, but those houses with the blue roofs and everything.
Man, as a 19-year-old, me and a buddy, after completing our first year of college in England, we traveled around Europe.
Yeah.
And one of those stops was in Corfu, Greece.
Yeah.
And we stayed at a place called the Pink Palace.
Ooh.
And I don't even know if it still exists.
Is it actually pink?
Is it ever pink? Yeah. It is one of the most legendary places that I've... Look at this, at hostelworld.com. This is not an advertisement. This is just me Googling it. It looks as though the Pink Palace is still open. They describe it as a favorite destination for backpackers and travelers, a popular meeting place, but I will never forget. Look at this place. We're showing this to our YouTube viewers. It is pure pink. And
we'll have to take a real talk.
We arrived.
Vacation.
We took a ferry from Brindisi, Italy. It's right on the heel. It's right on the heel of the boot, and you sail through the night on this ferry.
Yeah.
They call it sleazy Brindisi.
Yeah.
No offense, Brindisi. And we didn't even have. We were traveling super lean, bootstrapped, right? And so we didn't even buy the tickets that allowed us to go in the ferry. We were just on the ferry, so we were outside on the deck for the overnight sailing. Yeah, so I remember there was some fellow traveler. There's always the guy with the ukulele or the acoustic guitar, right?
Of course.
So we all had $3 bottles of wine, and this guy's playing his guitar, and everybody's just listening and drinking $3 wine, sailing through the night, or on this ferry through the night. And we arrive, first thing in the morning to the island of Corfu, and I'll never forget it. At the Pink Palace, at least this is back in 1990. I'm like so old, but this would have been in 1996.
The 90s.
They would not give us the keys to our room until we did shots of Ouzo.
That sounds European.
For anybody that doesn't know Ouzo, it's like Sambuca, basically like the heavy black liquors. They love their Ouzo in Corfu, and so finally we bit the bullet and put down the Ouzo, and we got keys to our own very own Pink Palace in Corfu.
Amazing.
Long story to say, shout out. Randy says, yeah, it's still here. I wonder if Randy's watching from the Pink Palace. Wouldn't that be cool?
But you digress.
Yeah, but I digress.
Wait,
it's so
we've got
cool to see
doctors,
people
Ryan.
joining us. Yeah. It's so cool to see people joining us, including when they're out on the road and traveling around the world, Randy, and others. We sure appreciate that. It's back to school. And kids, a lot of students are going to be going back to school like right now. Families have the backpacks ready. They got the lunch boxes ready, but it's not just kids. We want to celebrate lifelong learners in this very special edition of the Real Talk Roundtable, and we are thrilled to have three people who are walking the walk. All of them connected to Athabasca University. Dr. Aga Palalas is an associate professor in open digital and distance education at AU. More than 25 years of experience as a face-to-face and online adult educator, an instructional designer, a programmer, an academic. Combined with her passion for teaching and learning, Aga is focused her research on providing online and digital learning for the whole person. She teaches in both AU's Master and Doctor of Education programs, previously taught at the University of New Mexico in the USA. Mae Doran had no undergrad degree or formal education when she went back to school at the age of 63 and entered Yorkville University's Master of Adult Education program. After earning her master's, she enrolled at Athabasca University to earn her PhD in the Doctor of Education, the distance education program, earning that doctorate at 71 years young. Just a couple of years ago, she's been honored with an Academic Excellence Award. She's an adjunct professor of education at AU, and she's joining us live from Victoria, BC today. And Samarjit Dhillon is a current student at the AU's Doctor of Education, the distance education program. Born and raised in Punjab, India, she completed a Bachelor of Science in Nursing before coming to Canada in 1997. While working full-time, this is super cool, as a registered nurse in BC, Samarjit returned to school for her Master's of Nursing degree, which she earned in 2007. She enrolled at AU just a few years ago, now writing her dissertation with the goal of graduating in June of next year, still working full-time as an education consultant with the BC College of Nurses and Midwives. She's joining us from Abbotsford, BC. Three incredible CVs. Thank you all for joining us today. today. Mae, why don't we start with you? I love this. 71 years young, you graduate with your PhD. Was that a standing ovation at the ceremony or what? Take us into that experience.
Well, the ceremony was actually online. It was a convocation during the tail end of COVID.
Well, of course, yeah.
So it was beautifully done by AU, and I got to brag a little.
Well, it's a remarkable story. Had you always, like when you're in your late 50s into your 60s, was this always something in the back of your mind where you're going, I just know I still have this box I want to tick. I've still got this thing I want to do.
Yes, for sure, absolutely. And life had to clear away all the obstacles so that I could actually find the time. I was a single mom and business person and so on. So circumstances just allowed that I could take this new route, my third career, actually. Mm-hmm.
Well, absolutely fantastic. Oh, I want to come back to you in just a second, but Samarjit, I love what you've been doing because you're pursuing this education journey over the last 20 years or so while working full time the entire time. That's obviously goes without saying, got to be a huge challenge. How have you navigated that, especially learning at such a high level?
I would say having a passion for something, passion for learning, is an absolutely necessary ingredient of that journey. However, also having a clear goal in mind and some really good supports in place to navigate through that journey. I've absolutely enjoyed it. Hasn't been without challenges, but again, I want to say I've had some incredible supports in place that have made this journey very enjoyable for me.
Oh, I love that. What a shout out to those that have surrounded you. And obviously it's maybe a little modesty there at play as well. I'm sure that there's been a lot of long nights, a lot of early mornings, all part of that journey. There's no doubt about that. Aga, this has been a big part of your career, hasn't it? Like we talk about, your years of experience as a face-to-face instructor and educator, but an online adult educator as well. Is this a newer trend? Seeing people in on their back nine of their life go back to school, or have you seen this time and time again from people that just feel like there still is that passion for learning and they've still got to get something done?
You know what? People do have passion for learning if they have those supports that Samarjit has mentioned, right? And those supports, we learn informally all the time. As an educator and a long life student myself, or learner, because very often it's informally, everywhere I go, I see people learning, looking for new, being curious, searching for answers. Now, Athabasca creates that space, offers those supports. We are flexible enough for people to realize their dreams of learning that also is rewarded with a little bit more better, formalized awards and recognition of the hard work, as well as provides those, scaffolds and systems that offer us shortcuts and guide us through this learning path. Let me just tell you very quickly, I also am a graduate of Athabasca 3 times. And when it came to looking for a job, when I had this doctor in front of my name, I knew for sure that that was the institution I wanted to offer my resources to. So why? Because once again, for me, that was that celebration of, oh my God, this space gets it. Athabasca gets it. When I started learning at Athabasca, getting my master's there, we were sending our materials back and forth through snail mail. Now, we're talking about artificial intelligence in our day-to-day conversations.
Oh man, have things ever changed, right? I mean, like you just heard me going on and on about my traveling to Greece in 1996. Like it was, I remember doing that with a big Discman and a bunch of CDs and a huge travel guide, and my backpack weighed a whole lot more. We look at the evolution of online education. Wow, leaps and bounds over the past 20 years or so. Mae, what was it like when you didn't even have, when you at age 63, you enroll in a master's of adult education program, but you don't have an undergrad degree at that point. Like this was your first day at post-secondary at age 63. Were you feeling the same jitters that some kids might be feeling on their first day of school? Was it a familiar feeling for you?
Absolutely. I mean, it was online, and as Aga says, it's an incredible opportunity that these kinds of degrees are available now for us online. I could not have done it otherwise. There's no way I could have physically gone to a university. So yes, the jitters were there, and every single document or paper that I wrote was a brand new round of stress at the beginning. I didn't know whether I could write or not academically or present and so on. But I was supported and scaffolded by the degree programs, and I just kept going, and kept writing. And I loved it, so that also helped.
I don't feel like I've ever heard anybody use the phrase scaffolded, and I love the picture that it presents. Like I love that the image that it builds in my brain of just this support system around you while you construct something significant, something beautiful. That word, it's really great. And by the way, I'm going to steal that word, and I'm going to start using that word for myself. I hope you don't mind. Did you find
it's common in the world of education academics, that word, because we want to scaffold our students. We want them to feel supported without coming from above, but coming from underneath the support.
Yeah, I love that. Did you feel like you, or even in the bigger picture, maybe you can talk about people that you're working with, students you work with present day, did you feel like you were better positioned to embark on that post-secondary journey at a later stage in your life? Like, do you think that 19 or 20-year-old you may have approached those studies differently than 63-year-old you?
I have to say yes, I really, really do. My careers had given me confidence in myself that I did not have when I was 19, plus a whole world of experience of working with people. So that did give me a lot of confidence for sure. But I didn't know that I could write. I did not know that I would be good at this. I really didn't. I thought I would launch into this and just see if I could survive. And so when you mention the community, the culture, especially at Athabasca, we had a doctoral cohort that I'm still friends with now. We still communicate, we still talk. And I feel sad when I hear people say that their online experience was cold and isolated, because it was exactly the opposite for me. I don't know how I would have made it. My husband passed away just before I applied to Athabasca to get into the doctoral program, and I really didn't think I had a hope in, to get into a doctoral program after only 2 years and a master's. But I had some alumni that were in Athabasca that were like, "You're going to do this. You're going to do it. I'm going to call you back in 2 hours, and you're going to have written your intent for research." And, they pushed me, and I managed to get that application in by the end of January in 2018. And by some miracle, I got into that program. So I'm a huge, huge proponent of online cultures and online communities.
Wow. That's an amazing endorsement. Samarjit, did you experience the same thing? Like your studies have been in different contexts, right? Like you were at the University of the Fraser Valley, you've studied at UBC, you're now studying through the distance learning program at Athabasca University. What's that online experience been like for you? Checking in from British Columbia as you continue your studies.
Thank you, Ryan. My journey with, as you mentioned, it's been in different contexts. So my baccalaureate program was totally face-to-face. And then when I came to teach at University of the Fraser Valley, I was mainly teaching face-to-face. It was my first encounter with online learning was at UBC. One of the courses in the master's program was taught by, I think I can say the name, Marian Clausen, Professor Marian Clausen, in 2003. And that first encounter with online learning was so good. I didn't feel isolated. I felt so supported. It made me fall in love with online learning and online teaching. So I started to incorporate that in my teaching as well, where possible. And then when I was looking at doctoral degrees, Athabasca stood out to me again because it was a flexible program. It was fully online. I often say I wouldn't have enrolled in a doctoral program if it wasn't for fully online program. And my experience was very similar to Mae. I felt very supported by the professors. They were more like colleagues. Dr. Aga is one of them. And also it's a cohort-based program. So you take courses with the same group of people. I mean, a couple of people vary. Sometimes people take time off for personal reasons. And that, again, is a beautiful flexibility built into the program. So then they join a semester later or another 2 terms later. So you have a couple of people that may be different, but mostly you carry on and you build lifelong friendships. So I have thoroughly enjoyed that online learning at Athabasca University. It's absolutely made it possible for me to be in this doctoral program.
Wow, I love it. A green tomato is one of our commenters in our live chat today. Says, I love celebrating women achieving in academics through non-traditional paths. Aga, you got a big smile on your face when I read that. I mean, it might be obvious, but let me ask you why, because your face just like exploded into a smile when you heard that.
Okay, I might surprise you with my answer,
Sure.
though. I was thinking, okay, powerful women, yes. But as there is always a powerful woman supporting a powerful man, it also works the other way around. And for sure, in my case, when I was done with my doctoral studies at Athabasca, the first person I had to apologize to and thank for his support was my dear husband. What he had to put up with when I was working full-time and studying full-time for 4 years for my doctoral course. Yeah, I shouldn't be sharing here online with everybody, but he definitely deserved a t-shirt, doctoral program survivor. I was about to put that t-shirt, on him, but it never worked out. I'm still thinking to do that many years later. So yes, support of your family, understanding. It's understanding is a big piece of that. But also, I want to make a very quick comment about that experience that Mae talked about, how you come into those studies with a lifetime experience of not only building your knowledge, understanding, qualifying to study what you study, but also understanding life and people and circumstances and the fluctuating circumstances of life. And those experiences in our programs at Athabasca, the life experiences, are not only celebrated, recognized, appreciated, but they are built on. So our programs are really organized in such a way that our curriculum builds on that experience of mature students.
Well, it's fascinating to see the trends around post-secondary and how people are studying and where they're studying and when they're studying. And we just love the story of people that I mean, I know, Mae, for you, you're going to go, well, I only have 50 years left on this planet, so I want to make the most of them right now, But that's something that's absolutely inspiring to everybody. And it's my hope that this conversation gives somebody that final little nudge that they need, somebody that has forever thought about going back to school. And I mean, we're here talking about, Masters of Education, Doctor of Education, that type of thing. I mean, I know there's MBA programs, there's there's a ton, there's dozens and dozens and dozens of different programs and opportunities. And I just hope that as we're spending a lot of time talking about back to school for kids that are like aged 5 to 17 or 5 to 18, or university students, as we perceive when we say university students, most people probably think of 18 to 26-year-olds or whatever it is. And I love this reminder that learning is a lifelong process, a lifelong commitment. Mae, you talked about that passion for learning that you felt, and I just think it's a beautiful thing. And it's my hope that the right person, the person that needs to hear this, hears this interview and feels compelled to do something to better themselves. And who knows, also, let's say it for what it is, maybe create a whole new career opportunity for themselves as well. There's that as well. Maybe I'll ask the three of you, we love doing this as we wrap up roundtables, to sort of give us a closing thought or maybe a call to action or something to encourage the audience that'll watch or listen to this and maybe apply to their own lives. Samarjit, you want to go first?
Sure. So my final thoughts on learning sort of later in life is I want to relate back to, Ryan, what you were talking about traveling earlier. So if you sort of think about traveling earlier in life and later in life, earlier in life when you're 19 or 20, okay, you've got to figure out, okay, can I afford this? I have X amount of money. Okay, let's pack our bags and leave. And you go enjoy the experience. When you are planning to do that at 45, 50, 40 years of age, when you have other responsibilities and liabilities in life, you have your children, you have family, if that's your situation, then you've got to think about so many different factors. Okay, who's going to look after my children? What's happening in other parts of my life. So you have to prioritize and make sure you've got the right supports in place. And as Dr. Aga mentioned earlier, there's formal learning, there's informal learning. I think when you're going back to school later in life, it's very important for people to have their priorities right and have their supports in place. Because especially when you go back for formal learning, it's a long journey, full of challenges and joys. So you've got to make sure that you've got all the right support in place. And also another thing I want to say about formal learning versus informal learning, they're both equally valuable. And it just depends on the person's context. No one should think that, oh my gosh, formal learning is the only way to go. It should really be contextualized. And from my personal experience, I don't think it's worth it just for the financial gain. There's got to be a passion. You've got to choose a topic for your learning that's bigger than just the financial gain. If the financial gains come with it, that's excellent byproduct of it. However, you've got to, whether it's giving back to the field you're working in. For example, my research is related to nursing, and my passion is about contributing positively to the nursing education world. So my research is related to supporting registered nurses with bite-sized, online, on-demand programs when they want to transition into part-time clinical nursing instructors for post-secondary institutions. So you've got to have a goal in mind, and rest is, I highly encourage people to consider it. It's a very enjoyable, cool thing to do.
I love it. Like they say on The Bachelor and The Bachelorette, you've got to be doing it for the right reasons, right? Mae, what's your call to action? What are your words of encouragement for us?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. I think what I would say to everyone who's looking at this show and listening is that if you have a slight intuition, a slight feeling that you might be able to do something, there's something you might want to explore, and it might be a still small voice, to really just follow through on it and see where it takes you, see how far it will take you. Because, even there wasn't a paper that I wrote over those years where I didn't have a whole team of internal naysayers show up in my being to tell me I couldn't do it and this wasn't going to be good enough and I'd never get it done on time. And it was always, they were always showing up. It wasn't as if they sort of disappeared after I started doing well. They always showed up. And so everyone will probably, I'm guessing, will have, especially women, a set of naysayers within them that say, you can't do this or you can't do it well. And just to go past that and follow your intuition that you might have a feeling that you could do this and just take it as far as it will take you.
I love it. Dr. Aga, last word.
Oh my God.
If I could go on a first name basis, over to you.
Please go. Aga, it is. Yeah. So I tell you something. I'm just looking here at Mae and Samarjit, right? And you're lucky to meet two of the students that I have worked with. And I work with so many of these brilliant, fantastic students day in, day out. So when I think about why would I want to go back to school, is to be with these people, to be learning with them and from them. It's natural to be curious, obviously, but to have that support that's not only cognitive, but it is also social, emotional, and it's just fun. And you're taking risks, and you're making your mistakes, and then you're getting out of trouble, and then you're learning more, and you grow together with other people, and you are enjoying those moments that are fun, and then you enjoying even more so those moments that come after you've been challenged and you actually have come through hell, found yourself on the other side of it, and you feeling like you've learned, you've grown, and you feel satisfaction. And for that feeling of, overcoming challenges and coming out of it smarter and better and more mature, just back to school.
I love it. Hey, thank you to the three of you for making time for us today. I've been smiling the entire time, and I just think that these stories are remarkable. I absolutely love them. I guarantee you that somebody right now is 58 years old walking their dog, or 62 years old, listening to this episode on a road trip, or whatever the case may be, well into their 70s, going, why don't I go get that MBA? I've always wanted it. Why don't I go get it? And you've given them some compelling reasons to not just consider it, but to take that next step. And we applaud you for that. We've been talking to Dr. Aga Palalas, Dr. Mae Doran, and Samarjit Dhillon, all of them connected to Athabasca University. And we're grateful to AU for providing the resources to present this conversation. Thank you to all three of you, and best of luck as your back to school commences here in just a short time. You can learn more about the programs and courses that are available, including online adult learning, by visiting athabascau.ca. We're proud to partner with AU, Canada's open university with world-class accredited online degrees and courses designed, as you've just heard, so you can complete your education wherever and whenever it works for you. Learn more about the AU Advantage by visiting athabascau.ca. This episode of Real Talk is also happening with the support of our friends at Complete Care Restoration. Want to let you know, coming up on Thursday's episode, we got a couple of things we're talking about. Big changes with Alberta Health Services. We're going to get to that, and we're also going to sit down. I mean, not technically, Johnny. We'll do it remote because
We're
he's got
always
his
sitting.
He's got his. Do we need a stand-up? We need like a stand-up pulpit for when we're going to get more serious. But hey, this is as serious as it gets. Jasper's mayor, His Worship Richard Ireland's going to join us out of the gates tomorrow. Some folks, some Jasper residents are back in town. Others are going to be heading back this weekend. And, of course, for a lot of folks, the return back home to Jasper isn't going to be for a while. And that's why I'm talking to you about Complete Care Restoration right now, because they've got team members out there right now, trained, certified team members, experts in restoring properties and rebuilding peace of mind. They're in Jasper right now. They were in Slave Lake. They were in Fort McMurray. They were in BC. They've helped people in southern Alberta with the floods. They've seen it all, and they know what to do when disaster strikes. You don't want to put this project in the hands of just anybody when you're restoring your property. Make sure, heaven forbid, if disaster strikes, that you think of CompleteCareRestoration.ca. So as mentioned, as we wrap this episode, coming up on tomorrow, you're not going to want to miss. We only have 10 minutes with Mayor Ireland because obviously his plate is absolutely loaded right now. With, and you know that the Jasper's Council as well is working hard to get people back, the services there, the community there as this rebuild begins. So as you tune in, as you join us on that episode of Real Talk, make sure you're going to join us off the top. If you're streaming it live on the Mixler app, presented by California Closets, or on YouTube. And of course, you can always catch it later on YouTube via our channel. Thanks for subscribing, or wherever you get your podcasts. We'll also be taking a look at Danielle Smith and the UCP's restructuring of how healthcare is delivered in Alberta. They're tapping Covenant Health on the shoulder and threatening Alberta Health Services with losing facilities, with losing hospitals, if they can't improve that efficiency. Is it the right move, or are all of these folks crying foul onto something? Plus, our Friday roundtable this week, we take a look at innovation when it comes to the future of food. Should be absolutely fascinating. We hope you'll join us.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks.